So, for them cheating like this, it was the sort of the first time, maybe not the first time, but is it, is it time for a third party? Because, I mean, they're literally cheating progressives by essentially handpicking who's going to be the candidate by just, I mean, if you take a candidate and you just put massive amounts of money in the entire Democratic machine behind them, it's almost impossible to beat that. Because you're essentially, just giving that person a huge lead when you're supposed to have it as fair elections. How are we supposed to continue being Democrats if they keep shunning progressives?
So I support third parties. I support independents. I support whoever is for the policies that I'm for, I support. So I honestly, I think there's too much made of this debate in general, where there's like, kind of like a split on the left where some people are like, no, we have to go third party. And other people are like, no, we have to, stay within the Democratic Party. That's really like a non-debate ultimately, because I think at the end of the day, everybody really agrees, well, as long as you're for the right policies, I'm going to vote for you no matter where the fuck you are. But having said that, so having said that I support, people on the left, wherever they happen to be, however rigged it is within the Democratic Party, it's even more rigged the third party route.
I see.
And that's the thing that people have a hard time grasping, because look, man, we have the Green Party, we have Jill Stein. How'd they do? And that's not me putting down Jill Stein. I voted for Jill Stein. I love Jill Stein. I think she's a great person. I think she's right on probably over 90% of the issues. So I'm not trying to like be dismissive here or anything like that. I'm just saying that if people really want to dedicate themselves to going the third party route, step number one is you first and foremost have to unrig that system, because people don't even get fucking ballot access to third party route. I mean, the Green Party is the closest you can get to, but they're still not on the ballot. And I think it's 2 states. So what are they on the ballot in, like 48 states, but they're not on the ballot in 2 states. So, I mean, you need to unrig it. It's so rigged against third parties that it's fucking mind blowing. So in my mind, my analysis went something like this. It is super rigged against third parties. It's rigged against progressives trying to take over the Democratic Party, but I think it's slightly less rigged in that sense. So with sheer force and numbers, we can overwhelm and override the establishment and win from within the Democratic Party. And I think there's decent evidence, even though the DCCC is fighting back, the fact that Our Revolution and Justice Democrats have won like 40 to 50% of their races. I mean, I think that's pretty good evidence that it's possible. And then the other angle to it is, I would never encourage people, if you live in a state that has open primaries, I will actively encourage you to unregister as a Democrat. I support you. If I lived in a state that has open primaries, I wouldn't be a Democrat, okay? But what I will never do, because it is fucking stupid to do, is to tell people in states with closed primaries that they should unregister as a Democrat. Because if you do that, you're just throwing away any chance at change you have. Like, your vote really matters in states with closed primaries, in the primaries, if you're a Democrat. Like, if I wasn't registered as a Democrat in New York, I wouldn't have been able to vote for Bernie Sanders. And, this is an issue. I saw it so strikingly right in my face during the 2016 primary, because my brother-in-law was a registered Republican. He wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. He didn't change his party registration early enough to Democrat, so he wasn't able to vote for Bernie, even though he wanted to vote for Bernie. When I went and voted, there was a young kid, maybe about 22 years old, and he wasn't sure if he was registered as an independent or a Democrat. He went there to vote in the primary. He was going to vote for Bernie Sanders, but they looked up his party affiliation. He was an independent, so he wasn't able to vote for Bernie Sanders. So my general breakdown goes a little something like this. If you're in a state with open primaries, don't register as a Democrat. And if you are registered as a Democrat, unregister as a Democrat and be an independent. But if you're in a state with closed primaries, you better run right now to go register to be a Democrat so you can vote and make sure you get the progressive elected. So listen, I like to think that my approach to all this stuff is just ruthless and rigid pragmatism. And like, I'm all for just getting people who are on the left elected by any means necessary. And in my estimation, I think it's super rigged against third parties and slightly less rigged against the idea of trying to take over the Democratic Party, even though it's still rigged against us. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's mountains of evidence it's rigged against us. The DNC just rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders. So let's be clear about that. But it's basically you're trying to pick if you want to get your fucking pinky finger broken or your leg broken, and I'm picking my pinky finger. And I will support anybody, even if their analysis comes to a different conclusion than mine, fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I would just urge everybody to support people who are populist left wherever they may be. If they're registered as a Democrat, if they're registered as an independent, if they're in some third party, or even if they're registered as a Republican. I don't give a fuck. Just support the right policies, and that's all that matters.